The cream-colored envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I could bring myself to open it. I knew what it was. My sister Jessica's wedding invitation had been the only topic of conversation in our family for months. What I didn't know was whether my name would be on it. My hands trembled as I slid my finger under the sealed flap. The invitation was elegant, expensive, exactly what I'd expect from Jessica. Embossed gold lettering on thick cardstock announced her marriage to Brandon Mitchell at the Rosewood estate. I scanned the names of the wedding party: my younger brother, Tyler, my cousins, Marissa, and Danielle, even Jessica's college roommate she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. My name wasn't there. I checked again, thinking maybe there was a second card, a separate note. Nothing. Just a coldness that seeped into my bones as I realized my own sister had deliberately excluded me from the most important day of her life. My phone buzzed. "Mom, honey, I know you got the invitation," she said, her voice careful, walking on eggshells. Jessica said she had to make some difficult choices about the guest list. Difficult choices? I laughed, but it came out broken. "Mom, I'm her sister. Her only sister." According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. "I know, sweetheart. I tried to talk to her, but you know how Jessica gets when she's made up her mind. She said something about keeping the wedding intimate, and that after your disagreement, she thought it would be better." "Our disagreement?" I cut her off. "Is that what we're calling it now?" The disagreement had happened 6 months ago. Jessica had asked to borrow $15,000 for what she claimed was an emergency. Something about a failed business investment and mounting debt. I just received my inheritance from Grandma Rose, and Jessica knew it. Against my better judgment, against the voice in my head warning me that Jessica had a history of financial irresponsibility, I'd given her the money. 2 weeks later, I'd seen her Instagram posts from Paris. Designer boutiques, five-star restaurants, the Eiffel Tower at sunset with Brandon, who'd proposed to her in front of the Arc de Triomphe with a ring that cost more than a used car. When I'd confronted her, she'd laughed it off. "Oh, Brandon surprised me with the trip. I forgot to mention he'd paid back that debt for me. You'll get your money back, Em. Don't be so uptight about it." But I never did get it back. Every time I brought it up, Jessica had an excuse. The wedding was expensive. Brandon's business had a slow quarter. She'd pay me after the honeymoon. Eventually, she'd stopped returning my calls altogether. "Mom, she stole from me," I said quietly. She lied to my face and used my inheritance, Grandma's inheritance, to finance her Instagram lifestyle. And now she won't even invite me to her wedding? "Emma, please. Can't you just let this go? She's your sister. Family is supposed to matter," I interrupted. But apparently, I don't matter to Jessica anymore. After I hung up, I sat in my small apartment. The apartment I'd been able to afford because I was responsible with money, because I worked 2 jobs and saved and didn't ask for handouts. And something hardened inside my chest. Jessica had always been the golden child. Beautiful, charming, effortlessly popular. She'd glided through life on her looks and charisma, while I'd been the dependable one, the responsible one, the one everyone overlooked. And now she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I opened my laptop and started researching. If Jessica wouldn't invite me to her wedding, fine. But I'd be damned if I'd let her walk all over me without consequence. Brandon Mitchell, age 34, CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, a commercial real estate investment firm. Or at least that's what his LinkedIn said. I dug deeper, going through public records, business filings, court documents. It took me a week of late nights and increasingly complex Google searches. But eventually, I found the cracks in Brandon's perfect facade. Mitchell Enterprises was hemorrhaging money. 3 of his properties were in foreclosure. He'd been sued twice in the past year by investors claiming fraud. His business partner had filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office, alleging that Brandon had been running what amounted to a Ponzi scheme, using new investors' money to pay returns to earlier investors while skimming profits off the top. The lawsuits had been quietly settled out of court. The complaints had been withdrawn, but the paper trail was there if you knew where to look. And then I found the real gold mine. Brandon was still married. His divorce from his first wife, Patricia, hadn't been finalized. According to the county records, the divorce proceedings had stalled over asset division. Patricia claimed Brandon had hidden assets and was refusing to provide complete financial disclosure. The case was ongoing, with a court date scheduled for 2 months after Jessica's wedding. Brandon was about to commit bigamy, and Jessica had no idea she was marrying a fraud and a con artist who was likely after whatever money he thought her family had. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. This was it. This was how karma would show everyone who Jessica had really chosen to marry, but I had to be smart about it. If I went to Jessica directly, she'd dismiss me as jealous, as vindictive. She'd already painted me as the bitter sister who couldn't let go of a small loan between family members. I needed proof that couldn't be ignored, and I needed to reveal it in a way that would have maximum impact. The wedding was in 6 weeks. I had time to plan. I started with Patricia. It took some effort to track her down, but eventually I found her through a mutual connection on Facebook. I sent her a carefully worded message, explaining that I was concerned about someone who was planning to marry Brandon and asking if she'd be willing to talk. She called me within an hour. He's getting married? Patricia's voice was sharp with anger. He told the judge he couldn't afford temporary spousal support because his business was struggling, and now he's throwing a wedding? At the Rosewood estate, I confirmed. It's supposed to be quite elaborate. Patricia laughed bitterly. Of course it is. That's Brandon's specialty, looking successful while everything burns down around him. Do you know how many people he scammed? How many investors lost their retirement savings because of his schemes? I found some of the lawsuits, I said carefully. But I'm guessing there's more. Honey, what you found is the tip of the iceberg. Brandon's been pulling this con for years. He finds investors, promises them huge returns, shows them fabricated financial statements, and then uses their money to fund his lifestyle while the actual investments tank. By the time they figure it out, he's moved on to the next mark. Why hasn't he been arrested? Because he's good at covering his tracks, and he settles before things go to trial. Pays people off just enough to make them go away. Plus, he's charming. You've probably noticed that. He could sell ice to Eskimos. I had noticed. The few times I'd met Brandon, he'd been smooth, confident, quick with compliments and jokes. Jessica had been completely taken in. The woman he's marrying is my sister, I admitted. She borrowed a significant amount of money from me and never paid it back. Now she's marrying Brandon, and she didn't even invite me to the wedding. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. Family betrayal is the worst kind. I want to stop this wedding, I said, or at least make sure everyone knows exactly who Brandon is before it happens. Will you help me? Sweetheart, I'll do better than that. I'll show up and object when the minister asks if anyone has reason why they shouldn't be married. You can't get married when you're already married. Actually, I said slowly, an idea forming, I have a better plan. But I'm going to need your help and the help of some of those investors Brandon screwed over. Are any of them local? At least a dozen. Why? Because I want to make sure that everyone at that wedding, every family member, every friend, every guest, understands exactly who Jessica chose over her own sister. I want the truth to come out in a way that can't be ignored or dismissed. Over the next few weeks, Patricia and I became unlikely allies. She introduced me to 3 of Brandon's former investors who were willing to go on record about his fraud. She provided me with financial documents that proved Brandon's business was insolvent. She even gave me copies of their marriage certificate and the pending divorce papers. But we needed more than just documents. We needed impact. I hired a private investigator, one of my inheritance money's last acts, to document Brandon's current activities. What he found was damning. Brandon was still actively courting investors, still making promises he couldn't keep, still living far beyond his means on other people's money. The investigator got photos, video, recorded phone calls with Brandon's fake financial promises. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a panicked call from my mother. Emma, Jessica's been trying to reach you. She wants to talk. My heart jumped. About what? She didn't say, but she sounded upset. Will you call her? I debated for a full day before I finally dialed Jessica's number. She answered on the first ring. Emma. Her voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. I'm listening. Someone's been asking questions about Brandon, calling his business, talking to his associates. Do you know anything about that? So Brandon had noticed the investigation. Good. Why would I know anything about Brandon's business? I kept my voice neutral. Don't play dumb. I know you're still angry about the money, but if you're trying to sabotage my wedding, Your wedding that I'm not invited to? I let the words hang there. Jessica sighed. Look, I'm sorry about that. Mom said you were hurt, and I get it, but the guest list was really tight. And Brandon thought what, Jessica? That your own sister shouldn't be there? He thought it might be awkward given the tension between us. But Emma, if you stop whatever you're doing, if you promise to leave Brandon's business alone, I'll add you to the guest list, okay? You can come to the wedding. I almost laughed. Even now, she was trying to manipulate me, offering me crumbs like I should be grateful. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. The call told me everything I needed to know. Brandon was worried. He knew someone was digging into his past, and he was pressuring Jessica to control the situation, which meant our plan was working. The day of the wedding arrived bright and beautiful, exactly the kind of perfect day Jessica would have demanded from the universe. I wore a simple blue dress and arrived at the Rosewood estate an hour before the ceremony, not as a guest but as someone with a purpose. Patricia met me in the parking lot, along with two of Brandon's former investors, Richard Chen, who'd lost $200,000 in one of Brandon's fake real estate deals, and Margaret Kowalski, a retiree who'd invested her entire pension with Brandon and now lived with her daughter because she couldn't afford rent. You're sure about this? Patricia asked. Once we do this, there's no taking it back. I'm sure, I said. Jessica made her choice when she stole from me and cut me out of her life. Now she gets to live with the consequences of her other choices. The ceremony was set up in the estate's garden, with white chairs arranged in neat rows facing a flower-draped arbor. Guests were already arriving, dressed in their wedding finery, completely unaware of what was coming. I spotted my mother in the third row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Tyler stood near the front with the other groomsmen, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. Jessica's friends clustered together, their phones out, ready to capture every moment for social media. And then I saw Jessica. She looked stunning, of course. Her dress was couture, her hair and makeup flawless. She practically glowed with happiness as she greeted guests, her hand resting possessively on Brandon's arm. Brandon himself looked every inch the successful businessman in his custom tuxedo, his smile confident and easy. They had no idea what was about to hit them. The ceremony began right on time. The minister, a grandfatherly man with a gentle voice, welcomed everyone and began the traditional words. Jessica and Brandon stood facing each other, holding hands, staring into each other's eyes like they were the only two people in the world. If anyone present knows any reason why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The words hung in the air. Typically, this was just a formality, a vestige of tradition that no one ever acted on. Patricia stood up, the movement rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Heads turned, whispers started. Jessica's smile faltered. I object, Patricia said clearly. This marriage cannot proceed because Brandon Mitchell is already married. To me, our divorce isn't final. The gasps were audible. Jessica's face went white. Brandon's confident expression cracked, replaced by something cold and calculating. That's ridiculous, Brandon said smoothly, turning to the guests with a practiced smile. This woman is my ex-wife, and she's clearly unstable. Our divorce was finalized months ago. She's just bitter and trying to ruin our special day. Really? Patricia held up a folder. Because I have the court documents right here showing that our divorce case is still active, with a hearing scheduled for next month. We're still legally married, Brandon, which means marrying Jessica would make you a bigamist. The minister looked between them, clearly out of his depth. Is this true? Before Brandon could respond, Richard Chen stood up from where he'd been sitting in the back row. While we're sharing truths, Richard said loudly, everyone should know that Brandon Mitchell is a fraud. He stole $200,000 from me through a fake real estate investment scheme. I'm not the only one. There are dozens of victims. Margaret Kowalski stood next. He took my entire pension. I'm 72 years old, and I have nothing left because of him. The crowd erupted. People were standing, talking over each other, demanding answers. Jessica looked like she might faint. Brandon's mask had completely slipped, his face twisted with rage. This is insane, Brandon shouted. These people are lying. There's a criminal investigation, Patricia cut him off. The FBI is looking into your business practices. They've been building a case for months. I watched my sister's face as the truth crashed down on her. The shock, the disbelief, the slow dawning horror. as she realized everything she thought she knew was a lie. And then her eyes found me, standing at the back of the crowd. She knew, in that moment, she knew I was behind this. "Emma," she whispered, but her voice carried in the sudden silence. Did you do this?" I stepped forward, and the crowd parted for me. I walked down the aisle until I stood just a few feet from my sister and her soon-to-be not husband. "You cut me out of your life," I said quietly. "You stole from me, lied to me, and then didn't even have the decency to invite me to see you marry a con artist. So yes, I did this. I investigated the man you were about to marry. I found the truth. And I made sure everyone here would know who he really is before you legally tied yourself to his fraud and his debts." "You're jealous," Jessica hissed. "You've always been jealous of me, and you couldn't stand to see me happy." "Happy?" I gestured to Patricia, to Richard, to Margaret. "How happy would you have been when the FBI knocked on your door, when Brandon's creditors came after your assets, when you realized you'd married a man who was already married and using you to hide money from his victims?" "She's right," Patricia said. "Brandon proposed to your sister 3 months after I filed for divorce. He's been looking for someone to help him hide assets. That's why he was so eager to marry Jessica. He needed access to her family's money to keep his schemes going. Brandon made a break for it. He actually tried to run, pushing through the crowd of stunned guests. But Tyler, bless him, stuck out his foot. Brandon went down hard on the manicured lawn, and 2 of the groomsmen, both former college football players, sat on him until the police arrived. Because yes, I'd called the police. I'd sent them all the evidence I'd gathered, along with Patricia's documentation and testimony from Brandon's victims. They'd been waiting for the right moment to arrest him, and what better moment than when he was attempting to commit bigamy in front of 100 witnesses? The wedding dissolved into chaos. Guests fled. My mother cried. Tyler looked shell-shocked. And Jessica! Jessica just stood there in her couture gown, watching her perfect day implode, watching the man she'd chosen get handcuffed and led away while he screamed about lawyers and false accusations. When the police were done taking statements and most of the guests had left, Jessica finally approached me. Her makeup was ruined, mascara tracking down her cheeks. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "I loved him," she said. "He didn't love you," I replied. "He loved your money, or what he thought was your money. He was using you, Jessica." "And you couldn't just tell me that? You had to humiliate me in front of everyone?" "Would you have believed me if I told you?" I asked. "You didn't believe me about the money you stole. You cut me out of your life rather than face what you'd done. So yes, I chose a public revelation, because you needed to see the truth in a way you couldn't ignore or explain away." Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered. "About the money, about everything. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you." "Yeah," I said. "You did. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at my sister, at the wreckage of her perfect day, at the consequence of her choices finally catching up to her. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a tired kind of sadness. "Maybe," I said. "Eventually. But first, you need to pay me back, every penny. And you need to actually be sorry, not just sorry you got caught." Jessica nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll figure it out. I'll get a job, I'll pay you back, She broke off, fresh tears spilling over. "I really messed up, didn't I?" "Yes," I said simply. "You did. But Jessica, this is also your chance to start over, to stop pretending everything's perfect, and actually build something real." 3 months later, I received a check for $2,000 with a note. First payment, many more to come. I got a job. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be better. Jay, it wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. Brandon was charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, and a dozen other crimes. He took a plea deal and got 8 years in prison. The victims, including Patricia, are still fighting to recover what they lost. But at least he can't hurt anyone else for a while. Jessica moved back in with our parents, took a job as an assistant manager at a retail store, and started slowly rebuilding her life. We text sometimes, brief, careful messages. The relationship we had before is gone, but maybe we can build something new, something based on honesty instead of competition, on respect instead of resentment. My inheritance from Grandma Rose is mostly gone. spent on investigators and lawyers and the pursuit of truth, but I think Grandma would approve. She always said that families should lift each other up, but she also believed in accountability, in consequences, in making sure that people who hurt others don't get away with it just because they're charming or beautiful or family. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Sometimes justice requires action, not just faith that the universe will balance the scales. I didn't ruin my sister's wedding out of petty revenge. I did it because she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. And because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is force them to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Jessica didn't invite me to her wedding, but in the end, karma showed everyone, including her, exactly who she'd chosen to marry. And maybe, just maybe, it saved her from something far worse than public humiliation. It saved her from a life built on lies, with a man who would have destroyed her financially, emotionally, and legally. My sister didn't thank me that day. She might never thank me. But I can live with that because I know I did the right thing, even if it was hard, even if it broke something between us that might never fully heal. Family is important, but so is integrity, so is justice, so is standing up for yourself when the people who are supposed to love you treat you like you don't matter. I mattered enough to protect my sister, even when she couldn't see that she needed protection, and I mattered enough to demand accountability when she wronged me. That's not revenge, that's self-respect, and it's something I'll never apologize for.